You're on.
All right. Well, welcome to the April 6, 2020 meeting of the Stillwater City Council. This is now our third Zoom-based meeting, and the first one where we've been entirely remote. I'm not in the room at City Hall, and neither are the other 4 city councilors, but Norman's holding down the fort, and we can get this thing kicked off. So I will go ahead and call this meeting to order, and we will jump right into the agenda. So tonight, first item on the agenda is our consent docket. The consent docket tonight contains meeting minutes from our previous meetings here in the month of March. And then there's a memo to set a May 18th hearing for a request to close an easement. Councilors, are there any questions, comments, or motions on the consent docket?
Motion to approve
the consent docket.
Second.
I have a motion from Councillor Inaudi and a second from Councillor Wedlake. Theresa, can you call the roll?
Mayor Joyce?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Darlington?
Yes.
Councillor Inaudi?
Yes.
Councillor Wedlake?
Yes.
Councillor Jalal?
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. We do not have anyone signed up tonight on public comment, so we will jump down to item 5, general orders. Item A is approved bid recommendations for annual mowing of city property. Mr. McNichol.
Staff solicited bids for lawn care of city facilities, rights-of-way, parking lots, and small parks. 22 locations were included in the bid. 4 bids were received. You have a bid tabulation in your packet. Subsequent to the bid opening and due to economic conditions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, staff has researched ways to conserve funds. And what you need to know is that this bid was issued for a 7-day rotation of all of those locations. And the low bid came in at $68,480. Staff estimates that we could save somewhere in the vicinity of 30% of that amount if we were to rebid this on a 14-day rotation. Clearly, the issue becomes what kind of growing season that we have this year. If it's like this year, or excuse me, this last summer, certainly we could have some fairly ragged-looking places when 2 weeks rolls around, and if it rains at the end of that 2-week period, it could go a little longer. But that can happen on a 7-day rotation as well. So of the 4 bids received, the high was $108,180. I've given you the low amount. The other bids, or excuse me, $117,760. The next closest bid was $70,176. So staff is looking for guidance on mowing frequency. One option in this staff report, the recommendation is rejecting the bids for lawn care city facilities, right-of-way parking lots with a reduced mowing frequency. One thing that we could do is ask for both a 7-day rotation and a 14-day rotation. Not sure what that would do to the prices.
Okay, so we're looking at currently a bid of 68 to do it once a week. We think we might get that down to 40 something if we went to once every 2 weeks.
Right.
Okay. What is our capacity to mow with staff right now?
This is not all the mowing that is done in the city.
Mm-hmm.
Staff does the other. If we remain on the current rotation that we have for city staff, it's greatly reduced. As you're aware, we have one crew that is at home for a week and another crew that is out for a week. And so that cuts our operations people in half.
Yeah.
And it is also dependent on, frankly, how many water leaks we have, sewer leaks, and other things that would take priority over mowing.
Okay. Councilors, comments or thoughts on this?
So Norman, if we reduce the frequency down to once every 14 days or once every 2 weeks, and sign that contract, what does that contract look like? I mean, are we looking for the next year that we'd be only mowing once every 2 weeks? Or is this something that we could rebid after all of this, everything kind of settles down?
Well, we would have to rebid at this point to do it every 14 days because the bid that was sent out was for every 7. So we would have to reject the current bids and move on. Could we rebid it later? Yes. Or we could rebid currently right now for 2 options, 7-day and a 14-day rotation, what the costs are. And obviously, had we known this was coming, perhaps we would have done that then. But our clear direction from the council in the past has been that they want things neat and shipshape, and we understand that. But we are concerned about future budget issues, and $21,000 roughly is funds that could be repurposed.
Norman, with the current staff out, would this company take over? Would they be able to mow some of the stuff that they wouldn't be able to, or do they have a distinct job list that they do, and then the city staff have a specific job list that they do?
Under the current bid, there is a specific job list. If we rebid, we could add additional locations.
I am pretty high on keeping our property looking good. I think, if this were $200,000 difference, I'd be different. And I understand that every penny is going to be valuable as we move forward. I think people feel better when things look better. And I would stay with the 7-day rotation.
I agree with Vice Mayor Darlington. I think that there's all kinds of studies that show kind of the psychological impact of having things unkempt and not well maintained. And I think at a time in our community where there's already so much happening and going on, I think just some comfort in just having our city spaces well kept and well maintained. I think there's value in that. And I agree, if it was thousands of dollars, I think, obviously we need to be looking at those things. But if we're already going to have a little bit of a lag in what city staff is able to manage, I would hate to add to that lag with this contract going lower as well. And we're certainly coming. I don't know if there's a time at the end of the summer when things are kind of, I know at our house, things start to go a little brown and aren't growing quite as much. Could we maintain it during this heavy growing season and then consider something different when things aren't kind of gangbusters? I don't know. I agree. I would prefer to keep the 7-day schedule.
How does that contract work, Norman? Do you know? Is it once a week through August or September, or how long is the
I believe schedule? I believe it runs into the end of September.
I don't know that $20,000 here or there is going. We're going to need every penny, but I certainly understand there's a certain sort of standard and ideal, and if you drive around town and everything's overgrown, and it just adds to everyone's angst about the whole situation. And again, for this magnitude of dollars, I'm not sure that it's gonna make or break what we're doing. So I could see the point on the vice mayor's side. Is further discussion on this, or is there a motion? We can accept the contract currently, correct, Norman? Is that
yes? That's
an option for us. It's a local company that was the low bidder.
I was just going to say that I think that's an important thing to consider as well.
Another $20,000 in our economy with a local company is not a bad thing either.
Yeah,
that's right.
That was that.
Motion to accept the bid for Stillwater turf. for $68,480 for.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the low bid on this contract. Theresa, could you call the roll?
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Darlington,
Yes.
Councillor Inaudi,
Yes.
Councillor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councillor Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, that bid is accepted. That takes us down to 5B, approved bid recommendations for mill and overlay on Western Road from 3rd Avenue to Virginia and Hall of Fame from Ridge to Monroe. This is CC-20-56, and Mr. Monty Carnes is here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This is the project to mill and overlay the streets that were mentioned. Remember, originally we had planned to mill that and then overlay it with concrete, but those bids were excessive. We did a life cycle cost analysis and it wasn't justified to pay the additional cost. So we redesigned it, we rebid it. We had one bidder, Haskell Lemon. Haskell Lemon has the other pavement management contract. So they're able to just go ahead and add this project to it. We're going to do a pre-construction conference next week on the pavement management portions. And if you award this contract, we'll add that. We'll add this project to that pre-construction conference. We anticipate that the contract or the work will start sometime in May, probably mid-May. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilors, any questions for Monty?
Monty, the bid was 647, and then
Yes.
the motion is for 685. I presume that's for the contingency.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sorry, we should have made that clear.
I was. It worked out math-wise.
Okay.
I think it should be noted that even with that, though, our original allocation for this was 1.2 million. So we're still saving pretty good hunk of change here.
Mhm.
That's correct.
Yeah, and Monty, just to refresh my memory, I mean, when we talked about this, when you said the cost life cycle, or we were talking about if we did that concrete overlayer, we wouldn't have to do anything to this street for, I can't remember what the time frame was, 20 or 30 years.
That's correct.
And so factoring in the cost of what we'll have to do this again at some point within that same 20-year period. But the cost estimate shows that it's more cost effective to have to do it twice or however many times within that same time frame.
That's correct. And we're also looking at some different pavement management techniques going forward on asphalt that might reduce those costs even less in the future. The nice thing is we can try one treatment, and if it works well, we can continue to do that. If it doesn't, then we really haven't expended an excessive amount of funds, and we will get benefit out of the treatment. So right now we've got a couple of different options, but we did the life cycle cost, I guess what you call the most conservative or worst case. We have to do something to the project about every 7 years.
Okay.
I would add, even with the 30-year cost study of this, if we're saving money over that 30 years, fantastic. I think more importantly and more pressing right now, given what our cash flow issues are kind of looking like, the fact that we're saving about half of it right now, actually to me is the more important issue here. So, it's good to see that we're saving the money that we need right now, given our current cash flow issues.
That's correct. We would have had trouble coming up with the funds to have paid for the concrete.
Yeah.
Councilors, anything further on this item, or is there a motion?
Motion to approve award of a unit price contract to Haskell Lemon Construction for mill and overlay to Western Road from 3rd Avenue to Virginia Avenue and Hall of Fame Avenue from Ridge Road to Monroe Street, and authorized funding not to exceed $685,000.
Second.
We have a motion from Councillor Jalowski and a second from, let's say, Vice Mayor Darlington. Theresa, could you call the roll?
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Darlington,
Yes.
Councillor Inaudi,
Yes.
Councillor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councillor Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, that bid recommendation is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monty. That takes us to item 5C, an update on a dilapidated property addressed as 3314 East 4th Avenue, owned by Rick Lynn Cole. Mr. Dorman. Oh, you're on mute, John. Are we going to have Beth Ann handle this one?
I was going
Yeah.
to.
There.
Go for it, Beth Ann.
Thank you. My name is Beth Ann Childs, and I'm a Special Assistant City Attorney that was retained by the City of Stillwater to handle the dilapidated structures. We did have the opportunity to have the city's inspector go over there and take a look at the structure, and good bit of news there, because he indicated that he believed that the structure could be repaired. I've spoken with Mr. Cole several times over the last few days. He has texted me photos, plans, images, and other documents. And last week, he actually applied for a building permit. I confirmed that with city staff. He does seem to have a plan in place, and he has been very responsive every time I've reached out to him. I have 2 contact numbers, so I'm able to track him down pretty well. I do think that it's very important for the city council to keep Mr. Cole on task. And so with that in mind, Mr. Dorman and I discussed today that I would circle back around with him after the permit has been issued. And in my conversation with Mr. Cole today, I did emphasize to him that I thought it might be a really good idea to actually come up with an agreement to where there were certain benchmarks in place so that he will be motivated. Honestly, I was a little bit concerned about how he was going to go about getting this accomplished. So he and I had a number of discussions about that. He indicated that some of the work he was going to be responsible for, but he of course will use the skilled trades for plumbing, electrical, those types of things. I think that probably an agreement would be the best way to go. So Mr. Dorman may have an opinion about this, but my suggestion and request would be that you table this to the next meeting, and we'll hopefully have an update to you at that point in time. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Council, any questions for Ms. Child?
So Beth Ann, you're suggesting that by the next meeting, you would have a kind of a schedule and benchmark contract for us to look at?
Yes, ma'am. Now, there is one caveat to that. Assuming the workload of community development, because of course their input is going to be critically important. And so as they're going through this, if they see any problems with the potential permit, that would be the only thing I think that would slow us down. But what I did discuss with Mr. Dorman was sometimes when you put things in writing, it becomes real for people. And Mr. Cole, to his credit, has been very, very responsive, and I'm appreciative of that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that it looks like he may be able to get that work done and that the structure is salvageable. So, you know, it certainly makes sense to me to give them some time to get that structure in place. I think you're right that a contract of some kind or an agreement that says here's the schedule and here's what we expect to see and kind of lay all that out would be ideal in this situation. So it certainly sounds like a reasonable request at this point. Councilors, do we need a motion to table this, or should we just put it on the next agenda item or next?
I would go ahead and make a motion to table it, since you did this you originally rescheduled it
Yep.
to this date. And I would actually recommend 2 weeks just to give the Development Services Department time to go through the application, because I understand the turnaround on some of those can be up to 2 weeks.
Yeah, so our next regular date would be April 20th would be our next regular meeting. So I think that's when the motion would be for. Councilors, is there a motion on that?
Motion.
Go ahead.
Yep. Well, motion to table this issue until the April 20th meeting.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilor Wedlake and a second from the Vice Mayor to table this item until April 20, 2020. Theresa, could you call the roll?
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Darlington,
Yes.
Councillor Inaudi,
Yes.
Councillor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councillor Jalal.
Yes.
With a vote of 5 to 0, that item will be tabled until April 20th. Thank you, Beth Ann, for your help on that. All right, that takes us down to item 5D. This is a general discussion of the City of Stillwater response to the COVID-19 virus. We've kind of had this on as an open or relatively open agenda item just to kind of get an update on where we are. I think the best place to start here would be with Mr. McNichol to kind of hear about current city status and issues that have been addressed by the city over the last week or so since we last met.
Well, I'm pleased to tell you that we're down to 17 people in various stages of quarantine. The city jail reopening at 7 a.m. We expect that to remain open. We have had some generous donations of PPE, which helps immensely. And it's just to be clear, those things that we've received, we would not keep if the hospital could use them. They're items that they cannot use. And in addition, the hospital actually found some gloves today that they brought down to the PD, and those will be distributed amongst the employees. I think probably one of the most hopeful things that occurred during the week, at the end of last week, was the response to the shopping protocol, business protocol, if you would. Several of the large businesses here that are still open have voluntarily limited their number of people that they allow in their stores to be able to ensure that the 6-foot distance can be maintained between people. They've posted signs on their doors, and they are adhering to that. I was actually in one yesterday, so they're following those things. Excuse me. The allergies are alive and well in Stillwater too. The other really upside to that is that when we started calling people about that protocol, way over 50% of the people already knew about it and had begun to address it. So we're pleased with that.
That's excellent. I'm glad to hear that the jail staffing is back in order. And, when you say 17 people in various stages of quarantine, I mean, those are all folks that have either been in contact with or had, suspected they had been in contact with someone with the virus. And so we send them home and make sure they're not sick before we bring them back over. I had gotten some questions about why there was a fire truck at the senior center, and I know we discussed that, I think, at the last week's meeting or point thereafter. But I was glad to see that the fire department is sort of splitting up that main fire station so that we don't have people who may come in contact with other people that are sick and then end up having to put a lot of people out at home on self-isolation, to make sure they're not sick. So, the work that you guys have been doing to kind of keep everything running while also making sure, staff stays safe and healthy is, I know, not been easy, and certainly, deserve a lot of credit and thanks for making sure that stuff keeps going.
Well, thank you. And I do want to compliment staff. They have been remarkable in responding to this. Again, these are uncharted waters, and we've been drawing maps as we go. So kudos to those that have stepped up and done this work and have soldiered on without complaint. I would also be remiss if I did not thank the sheriff's office for helping us out in our time of need when we had so many of our detention officers in quarantine. And that quarantine number, there have been people at one point, we had as many as 30 something out, and that number has dropped. There have been some that have been added to that, but we're really pleased to see that number dropping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we've instituted PPE here, and anyone who is within any employee that's within, because of working conditions, riding in a truck or digging a hole or whatever it is they may do and wiring a pole that are within 6 feet of each other are required to be wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm. Okay, councilors, any questions for Norman on city status of city services, anything like that?
Nope.
Oh, I will just reiterate that in terms of our appreciation for staff. I mean, everybody, you know, that's out from the police station, the fire stations, the folks running the power plant and the water treatment plant and wastewater. You know, these are essential services that we all depend on, right? Especially if we're staying at home all day, we need all that stuff to work. And you know, those folks have really been working tirelessly. I hope you know, if you get a chance to even, you know, put a sign out or wave at the waste management collectors as they come by. I mean, that stuff is still all running on schedule, keeping, you know, our homes you know, running. And so, you know, there are people who are making sure that happens. There are a lot of people behind the scenes, and we talk about that sometimes, you know, here at meetings, and you know, express our gratitude for the folks that work behind the scenes so much and keep things running. But at a time like this, it's even more so, especially since they're all on, you know, half staff sort of to keep you know, some people home and keep from getting sick. So I mean, it is a gargantuan effort right now that our city workers and city employees and everybody from Norman, you know, everybody in the city manager's office, all the way down, are putting in. And I think that's just a wonderful thing for our city to have folks that as dedicated as you all are, keeping our homes and our, you know, essential businesses running while we're dealing with a absolutely unprecedented kind of situation. So thank you to all the City of Stillwater workers who are out there on the front lines keeping all this going.
If I can add one more thing, if you see some city employees in the next few days that look a bit pale in the face, it's not because they're ill. To be able to effectively use PPE, some of our folks, additional folks, police and fire have already been through this. Some of our additional folks are going to have to use a razor and get rid of their beards. So you've set a good example. You've set a good example, Mayor. We appreciate it. And,
I'm keeping it up, even though every morning I get up, I think, man, I'm just going to let it, I'm not going to shave today, but I'm sticking with it.
Okay. Well, and we thank the employees for that too, because it's a big deal to come up.
It is.
It really is.
Okay, so just a quick recap of kind of where we are from a emergency declaration standpoint. We continue to be under a shelter-in-place order here in Stillwater. That means that you should be in your homes unless you are going out to work at an essential job or going out to run an essential errand. An essential errand, you know, means going to buy food that you need, going to buy supplies that you need for your home to keep it functioning, going out to pick up medicine or to go to the doctor, those sorts of essential types of tasks. If it is not an essential task, you should not be leaving your house to do it. That is the basis of a shelter-in-place order. That is, you know, what is being recommended at I think all levels. You know, whether it's being recommended from our federal folks who are working on this, or down to some states that have ordered it in different locations within the city, within the state of Oklahoma. There are probably a dozen or more cities within the state of Oklahoma that have adopted these same sorts of shelter-in-place regulations, and that's what they're for. They're to keep people from coming in contact with each other as much as possible, and to continue to help slow the spread of the virus. I think today we were up over 1,300 positive cases in the state. Payne County is around 21 or 21 today. That has been slowly growing. It's not, we haven't seen a huge spike in Payne County. That's a good thing, but it is definitely still growing. And it is growing in, we've had restaurants shut down and orders around social distancing in place for more than 3 weeks, for almost 3 weeks. And so, those are new cases that have come since we started this, right? At the beginning, we talked about we're going to test and we're going to see all these cases that once we start testing that were all these positives out there before we even really started messing with this. But, now these positives are cases that are spreading even with some of these social distancing guidelines in place, which just makes it all that much more important that we continue to follow them and continue to avoid personal contact. One of the other sort of recent developments we've seen over the last few days, the CDC is now recommending in areas with community spread that you wear a cloth mask if you're out and about, if you're running an essential errand to the store or at an essential job where you're being potentially in close contact with other people, you need to be wearing a cloth mask. Don't wear a surgical mask. Don't go find an N95 respirator. Those things we need to use for frontline medical personnel, but a cloth mask that's homemade or that you pick up, from somebody else who's making them. I've been using like a neck gaiter buff kind of a thing that I just sort of double over and covers my mouth and my nose. And really the point of these things is not to keep me from getting sick myself when I wear it, but to help just reduce the possibility that I might be spreading something while I'm out. But that is a recommendation from the CDC now in places like Stillwater, for sure. I saw today that the city of Guthrie has actually mandated it as part of their emergency orders. That's certainly something we'll continue to monitor on our end to see if that's a necessity here. But whether it's part of an emergency order or not, it's absolutely a very strong recommendation from the CDC and from us as well that you find a cloth mask or something to use as a cloth covering over your face and mouth if you have to be out in public. It is not an excuse for you to be able to go out in public. Just because you're wearing a cloth mask doesn't mean you can go run around and do non-essential things. You should still be at home unless you have an essential function to perform. But if you are out and performing an essential function, you should also be wearing a cloth mask. I think that's it in terms of updates on the sort of status of where we are. Again, we continue to work with stores in town that are open to try to help them find ways to mitigate personal contact. We've been as Norman said, we've been very pleased with the efforts that have been undertaken by those stores to help keep people separated while they're in the store performing those essential errands. We'll continue to work with them, continue to find more ways to do that. But I think the overall message right now for everyone in Stillwater is that these orders are currently in place through April 30th statewide. That's another 3.5 weeks at least, and it's time to settle in, really adopt this from a personal standpoint. Please do everything you can to keep from getting someone else sick. The main message we've been trying to share is that you absolutely could have this virus and not know it, and you could inadvertently pass it on to someone else if you are not taking every step you can to prevent that from happening. So stay at home, wear a mask if you have to be out, and limit your personal contact with others, because you may not know that you're spreading the virus to someone else, and we need to get this thing under control, and we need to keep each other safe. Councillors, additions, comments, questions that you'd like to add to this discussion around COVID?
Mayor, I would love to update you on just a few of the volunteer and agency things that are going on in the city. It's amazing how many helping people and generous people and volunteers all over the place. But I did have an update today from our Daily Bread, Becky Taylor. She mentioned that they have changed their guidelines. Their income guidelines have been expanded temporarily to cover even more people in a difficult time. And to remind everyone that they do not ask you to prove your income. They just ask if you fall within the income guidelines. So those income guidelines will be shown to you when you go down to our Daily Bread with their new drive up distribution model. And I think it's quite interesting, representing the hard work that they're doing. Since March 17th, they have served 889 households, representing 2,243 individuals, handing out 1,015 boxes of non-perishables to families, in addition to a large amount of produce, bread, eggs, dairy, and meat. They're pretty okay with food right now. Everyone, and they say they will let people pick up food for other people too, if you bring a copy of that other person's ID with you. Also, Stillwater Cares has just posted this afternoon that there are 3 entities hiring people if someone is actually looking for a job. Tractor Supply, Sprouts, and Our Daily Bread. The domestic violence shelter, Wings of Hope, is doing well. They were at capacity. They have 1 room now available. They're still doing EPOs and able to do their support services for people. I think that there are a number of mental health resource support and treatment sources on a list from very simple listening, free listening, up to full service treatment. And that there's the Stillwater Public Library has done a great job of keeping a resource list. They have that mental health resource list, as well as the OSU resource list for students, faculty, and staff, which is very complete and covers quite a few things. I do just want to, as we get into this 3rd week and beyond of this situation, the novelty is completely worn off, and it's starting to be real. I think this week for people who have young children who are starting back online school, another layer of kind of stress has been added. I remember again that this is most of what we're feeling is grief and loss, and that is a whole mishmash of feelings. And on top of that, an actual feeling that is a part of grief and loss, but also a part of a feeling threatened and fearful is anxiety, and how it's quite normal for us to, because our brain is telling our body that we're under threat, to want to run or fight or bind. And we can't actually do any one of those things care easily. So it's pretty frustrating. I would say that also that feeling this grief all the time is super tiring. That even if we were to sit in our chairs for the next 3 weeks, we would be exhausted, because that is a lot of internal work. And so be kind to yourself. I've had to tell myself that I can only work about 75%. And some days that's only 60%. So get some realistic goals for yourself. The feelings of grief and the feelings of anxiety that we feel are normal, and they can get out of control. So I do want to caution everyone to keep a balance. I think the simplest way to put it is too much of something or too little of something. Too much food, It's the wrong kind of food. I know somebody who ate almost a half bag of chocolate chips last night. That's not too good. Not to be named, of course. But too much or too little. Too much food, too much sleep, too much wine, too many chocolate chips. Too little food, too little sleep. Are both ends of the spectrum are things to watch out for, as well as really getting out of control. Not an unseen possibility at all. We want to be safe in our relationships, safe with our children, and the mental health resources that are on the library website have hotlines for domestic safety, domestic violence, children's safety, and suicide hotline. This can be an overwhelming time. So if you're worried about yourself or worried about someone else, don't hesitate to reach out for on any of those hotlines. I think that's it. And I am happy to answer any questions. I'm easy to be contacted by telephone or email. My name and email, personal email and phone number are on the resource list at the library. So I'm happy to help anyone navigate that.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. That's helpful words, and thank you for all the work you've done to collect that information and be in touch with those different organizations. Well,
it's really a privilege to talk to the different organizations. I've been in touch with United Red Cross and Salvation Army, and they're all working hard. I will say Salvation Army has had a lot of requests for rent, especially right here at the first of the month. They could sure use donations.
Yeah, and that actually, one of the other things that we haven't talked about much yet is the Stillwater Community Foundation has established a fund through the Oklahoma Foundation of Communities or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But this is a local fund administered by the Stillwater Community Foundation. All of the money collected will be spent locally here in Stillwater to assist groups like the Salvation Army in providing rent money, to help our daily bread with making sure they have enough food, all that sort of thing. So if you are looking for an opportunity to give, the Stillwater Community Foundation would be a fantastic place to start, just given that they're going to be able to kind of cover a whole lot of different needs out of that same fund. And so I'll make sure I get some more information shared about that. I know they've got a Facebook page set up. And I'm sure if you just do a Google search to Stillwater Community Foundation, you'll be able to find some more information there.
Yeah.
But there are
the city sent notice recently.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, if there are opportunities, I know there's talk. I'm not sure what the exact status is of this dividend or money that might be paid out directly to individuals from the federal government, but I think those of us who haven't experienced a dramatic loss of income, I think would be well served to look at opportunities to donate that money to folks who have, and the Stillwater Community Foundation would be an excellent place for those who are looking to help our community out. Other councilors, other comments or updates or thoughts you'd like to share with us?
I just want to remind everybody that one other way that we can help our community right now is to be buying those gift cards from our small businesses, whether that's restaurants or other businesses that have online capabilities. And that's a big part of keeping our community intact and keeping our local businesses open for business down the road. I know that the Chamber of Commerce website has a really great list and is doing some giveaways and things like that to support those businesses. And I think Visit Stillwater also has a really nice list of businesses in town that are doing online or delivery options. People are getting really creative with the way that they're able to deliver goods and services. And I think it's a great opportunity to show our community that we care about them and that we want them to make it through and see them on the other side.
Ditto.
Absolutely. Yep. Other updates? All right. I will add one thing. I just wanted to point out. I got a message today from a group, the OSU Chinese Faculty Association, that's already donated almost 10,000 masks to the city and to the medical center. They've got some more available and are looking for more places to share those as well. So we'll get in touch with them. The groups like that have just, I mean, I've had professors on campus reach out that, can make 3D printed safety equipment in their labs. We've just had so many different people from all over the place reach out and say, what can I do to help? And so it's really inspiring and wonderful to see. And again, certainly we would expect nothing less from the Stillwater community pulling together in a time like this. Okay, I think that's all I've got on the COVID-19 situation at this time. So we will jump back into the agenda at item 6A. We have an ordinance on second read. This is ordinance 3450, an ordinance regarding property addressed at 1724 North Yardow Road to rezone the south 140 feet from A, agricultural district to RSS residential small lot, single family residential district, and to rezone the north 507.4 feet from A, agricultural district to CG, commercial general district. Councillors, is there a motion on this item?
Yes. Motion to adopt ordinance 3450.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Mayor Darlington and a second from Councillor Inaudi to adopt the ordinance. Theresa, can you call the roll?
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Darlington,
Yes.
Councillor Inaudi,
Yes.
Councillor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councillor Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, that ordinance is adopted. Item 6B, ordinance 3451, an ordinance amending Chapter 23, Land Development Code, Article 3, Land Development Process to amend Section 23-65, Variances and declaring an emergency. This ordinance 3451 is also on second read to our ordinance we discussed at our last meeting regarding some administrative ability to keep land development issues moving. Any questions or a motion on this ordinance, councillors?
Motion. Oh, go ahead, Pat.
I do have a comment. I asked last week, why this particular ordinance change had to be made, and it was because there's difficulty with public announcements and public people being at meetings. And I certainly hope that June 30th is a nice deadline on this ordinance. However, I hope that we are working on the possibility of doing meetings by virtual for a long time in case we need it, because business can't just stop. Mm-hmm. So given that, I would
Vice Mayor, John Dorman and I had a discussion about that today, and it is our intent that when some of the orders are renewed, that we'll take a look at removing some of those restrictions and being able to formulate an electronic meeting in the next few weeks.
Good. For other groups.
For other boards, yes.
Yeah.
Other boards and
Thank
groups.
you.
And just as a reminder for those who maybe weren't here last week or listening last week, that the difference, we can run a city council meeting virtually. Some of these boards, like the Board of Adjustment, require or involve a sort of semi-judicial process, which is a bit of a different requirement. And so we're wanting to make sure under the new expanded open meeting law with the electronic capability that we follow all the new guidelines. So I know John and the city attorney's office and all the city attorneys across the state are trying to make sure they've got all that stuff straightened out. We don't ever want someone to not have a right, to be at a meeting or to speak at a meeting that they would otherwise have. So yeah, I absolutely agree though, Vice Mayor, we want to make sure that's done as quickly as we can. We just also don't want to make sure stuff has to sit and wait if we don't.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
So is there a motion on this ordinance?
I was trying.
Oh, sorry, Amy.
It's okay. Motion to adopt ordinance 3451.
Second.
We have a motion from Councillor Jalowski and a second from Vice Mayor to adopt ordinance 3451. Theresa, can you call the roll?
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Darlington,
Yes.
Councillor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councillor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councillor Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, ordinance 3451 is adopted. At this point, councilors, we would need an additional motion on the emergency declaration for that ordinance so that it can go into effect 30 days from publication.
Actually, Mayor, will go in effect tomorrow if you adopt the emergency declaration.
You're right. So it doesn't have to wait 30 days from publication.
Yeah.
Motion on the declaration of an emergency.
Second.
We have a motion from Councillor Wedlake and a second from Councillor Zanotti to declare an emergency on regard to ordinance 3451. Theresa, can you call the roll?
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Darlington,
Yes.
Councillor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councillor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councillor Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, that emergency clause is adopted. Okay, that takes us to reports from officers and boards. Any specific announcements, Mr. McNichol?
No, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Dorman?
Nothing to report, sir.
Councilors, anything from you all?
Are you
I want
talking
to.
about the census, Mayor?
Yes, I am. Thank you for reminding me. So you may have seen online this week that the mayor of Norman, Bria Clark, issued a challenge, a Bedlam census challenge to see which of our towns could have the higher self-response rate in the census responses. So you can actually track that on the census website. It'll tell you what the response rates are for different communities. And so it sounded like fun to have a little Bedlam matchup while there's no sports going on. We were at that point, we were down 3% when I accepted this challenge. And the challenge, by the way, is whoever wins gets to pick a hat that the other mayor has to wear at a city council meeting. So we were down 3% when we issued the challenge. We're now down like 5%. So this is not going well for us, which is
Come on,
for the course on Bedlam.
That's right. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
But you know, it is really important to continue. Wanted to just try to raise some awareness on census response because we're past census day, but April 1st was not the deadline to respond. You can still respond to the census online, by mail, or by phone. And we desperately need people in Stillwater to make sure that they are responding, especially students who may not be here on campus right now, but should still be counted as part of the census because they are normally residents of Stillwater, and being displaced by the pandemic should change that and doesn't change that in the census's calculation. So, it may be a couple of months probably before the census takers are actually going to be able to go circulate through neighborhoods and check on people who haven't been counted yet. And unfortunately, that'll most likely happen in the summer when students won't be here anyway. So it is vitally important that we get a solid count of our student population here in Stillwater. And I hope students don't want to see the mayor of Stillwater wearing an OU hat in a city council meeting. So I would please urge you, wherever you are, if you see this and you're down in Dallas back home with your parents, or you're somewhere else in the state, or wherever you are, that you get online and make sure you register with your Stillwater address for the census so that you can be counted as part of the population we serve. Okay. Anything further, councilors? Is there a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Mayor and a second from Councillor Zanotti to adjourn the City Council meeting. Theresa, please call the roll.
Mayor Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Darlington,
Yes.
Councillor Zanotti,
Yes.
Councillor Wedlake,
Yes.
Councillor Jalowski.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, the Stillwater City Council meeting is now adjourned. At this time, I will call to order the April 6, 2020 meeting of the Stillwater Utilities Authority. And on the Utilities Authority docket, first up we have the consent docket consisting of special and regular meeting minutes from March 2nd and March 23rd. Is there a motion?
Motion to accept the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent docket. Please vote. I'm sorry. There's no button. Theresa, could you please call the roll?
Chair Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Chair Darlington,
Yes.
Trustee Inaudi,
Yes.
Trustee Wedlake,
Yes.
Trustee Jalal.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. We will jump down now to item 5. The only agenda item here is 5A, approve a bid recommendation for Perkins Road Waterline Relocation Project. And Mr. Bill Millis is on with us here to speak with us about that.
Yes, good evening. I'm Bill Millis, Water Utilities Engineering Director. Tonight, I'd like to provide you with the bid results for a project to relocate waterline conflicts in advance of the Perkins Road Water Widening Project, So the project is along Perkins Road from McElroy to Lakeview. And the work includes 12 work sites, including 2 connections of dead-end water lines and also abandoning an obsolete water line. In the design phase, we also evaluated for sewer conflicts, but found none that conflicted with the proposed road work. As far as the budget, the construction, the low bid was just over 1.8 million, and including contingency and other construction support items, that's 1.992 million. There are sufficient funds in the Water Capital Fund and the Water Fund. And if this item is approved, funds would be appropriated from those 2 funds to the project. Including, just to give you the bigger picture of the entire project, it was just over 200,000 previously authorized for engineering and design services. So that would make the entire project expenditures at almost 2.2 million. I would be glad to try to answer questions about the project, or also provide my recommendation.
Trustees, any questions for Mr. Millis? Let's hear the recommendation then, Bill.
Okay, sure. It's almost exactly what's in the report, but I recommend that the trustees award the bid to the lowest responsible bidder for Entrenching in the amount of $1,807,710. Authorize staff to execute the construction contract for the above amount. Authorize $1,992,000 in construction expenditures, which includes construction, testing, and approximately 10% contingency, and authorize the 2 budget amendments associated with the project.
Trustees, is there any other question, or is there a motion on this item?
Motion to accept the staff recommendation to award the bid to the lowest responsible bidder for Entrenching. Authorize the staff to execute the construction contract. Authorize $1,992,000 in construction expenditures, which includes construction, testing, approximately 10% in contingency, including past authorizations of $206,300, increasing the total project authorized expenditures to $2,198,300.
Does your motion also include the budget amendments that Mr. Millis spoke about? That wasn't in the report. He added
They're not in the report, but they were in my recommendation, if you don't mind including them.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion from the Vice Mayor and a second from Councillor Jalal to accept staff recommendation on this item. Theresa, can you call the roll?
Chair Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Chair Darlington,
Yes.
Trustee Inaudi,
Yes.
Trustee Wedlake,
Yes.
Trustee Jalal.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, that item is approved. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
With nothing else on the SUA agenda for this evening, trustees, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion
Motion
to
to
adjourn.
adjourn.
I
Second.
don't have any idea who made that motion first. I think we'll say trustee Inaudi moved and trustee Wedlake seconded. Theresa, can you call the roll?
Mayor, may I jump in for just 1 second?
Yes.
Maybe 5. We'd like to give a shout out to Rockford Todd of Aspen Custom Electronics, who has helped us greatly in conducting these Zoom meetings and facilitating the ability to connect the public if they so desire.
Yep, and I had that on my list of things to say earlier, and I totally missed it, but I appreciate
That's
that
fine.
because there have been our internal IT staff and the folks over at Aspen Custom Electronics that have really made this possible, and again, that whole list of people that have done a lot of work to make this stuff happen is a big one. So thank you for adding that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, we have on the table a motion and a second to adjourn the SUA meeting. Theresa, can you call the roll?
Chair Joyce,
Yes.
Vice Chair Darlington,
Yes.
Trustee Inaudi,
Yes.
Trustee Wedlake,
Yes.
Trustee Jalal.
Yes.
With a vote of 5-0, the Stillwater Utilities Authority meeting is now adjourned. We appreciate everybody tuning in tonight, and thanks for everybody in staff who made this thing happen. Have a good night.